feel like your feet are on the ground comfortably. Sitting all right. Okay, so touch your thumb to your middle finger, and then put the back of your hand down on your lap. And I'd like you to close your eyes. Take a couple of deep breaths. Breathing in through your nose. I'd like you to imagine the rising sun. Pick a place on the where you can imagine the horizon is, and imagine the round ball of the rising sun. I'd like you to connect the rising sun with your right eye. Imagine the light from the rising sun going into your right eye. Allow the sun to enter your right eye. Get closer to your right eye and closer. You can imagine the ball of the rising sun going into your eye. Now I'd like you to imagine the full moon in the sky. The round, white full moon. Connect the full moon with your left eye. Allow the rays of the full moonlight to enter your left eye. Allow the round circle of the full moon to enter your left eye. Now slowly open your hands and bring your palms up to your eyes. You can touch your eyes or your brow or not. You're going to make 9 circles from inside up to outside around your eye. And now slowly go in other directions. From up outside, down and inside. 9 times. I wanted you to get a feeling of the full moon and the sun, the moon, what it feels like for you personally. I'm sure you all can imagine slightly different colors, slightly different skies, slightly different sensations in your eyes and in your body. So all of that is your own feeling. So it's connecting with your own yin, your own inside. This talk is on gathering yin, the moon in Chinese medicine. And this is two pictures I took of this rising setting sun and the full moon, almost full moon. Did anybody picture the full moon in a light sky or in a dark sky? Dark. Light. And we see it in both. And has anybody seen the full moon and the rising sun together in the sky? So in China, I went to China in April, and many places in China, or many places, especially the big cities, you have really a difficult time seeing any sun or moon. Mostly what you're seeing when you look up in the sky is a lot of buildings and construction. I think in Chinese medicine we tend to think, China is the perfect place where everything is wonderful and nature. We talk about nature so much in Chinese medicine, and I will, but the reality is for so many people that they're seeing city. I went to this city of 13 million people in Sichuan province, and with 13 million people, it was so vast. Here's another picture of the center of that city I went to. And you can, when you're standing in this area, which is like the subway, open subway tunnel, subway station, you're in the center square, and you can see these buildings with moving neon lights all over the entire building. And you can see several of those buildings in every direction. And of course, construction. And after I took a picture, I realized they have put in this relief sculpture of mountains to try to bring some nature in, I think. But I didn't even notice that while I was standing there. I was taking this picture actually to take a video of the sky and of the building while it had moving neon lights. So I was kind of missing the moon while I was there. So first I would like to talk about what is yin and yang. I'm going to slide all black. I guess that's fitting because we're talking about yin. So we have a black background, so it makes it look like we have definitely more of the yin part of the yin yang symbol filling out everywhere for today. So the characters for yin and yang help us understand some of what yin and yang is about. This part, this side of the yin character, this is a traditional character, and this is a simplified character for yin, and this is the traditional character and the simplified character for yang. And the left side of all of that is a sort of steps up a mountain. So I took this picture of a mountain that I had, and so you can really see. I think maybe this is even the side, the top of the mountain turned on its side, but some people will say that it's climbing steps of a mountain. And this is the symbol for moon right here in simplified character. And this is the symbol for sun. So they've just really simplified it down to sun and moon. But the original characters show the shady side of a mountain and the sunny side, the sun rays hitting. That's the sun, and this is the sun rays hitting the mountain. So I thought this picture because it shows yang, yin, yang, yin, over and over again. However, they're relative terms. They're not absolute. So even though it looks so stark, like this is really strong shade in the light of the sun. it's really, every shady part has a yang part, and every sunny part has a yin part. And every part goes into another part too. You can see the transition here where you're coming down the sunny part and then you get into a shady part again. And when you're up at the top of the peak, where it's shady, you're at a very yang part of the yin side of the mountain. Does that make sense? And so everything with the moon is also relative. There's a yang part of the moon and a yin part of the moon, no matter what. Even in this landscape, the mountain isn't the most yang part, like relative to this whole landscape, even the sunny side of the mountain. Does anyone have an idea of what's more yang in the picture? What's more above? What's more bright? What's more like the sun? Or closer? And what might be considered a more below or quiet part of this picture? The sky goes over everything. The sky is more yang even than the bright side of the mountain. So even though we have this character that says the bright sunny side of the mountain, relative to the mountain, the sky is still more yang. And then even though this character is the shady side or the moon side, the earth is even more yin. And those are even more extremes, and they're not absolutes either. So we can have the surface of the earth or the inside of the earth. So it's really neat how everything can be seen in relation. Any questions? We're going to start off the moon cycle of the moon, talking about the beginning of the moon, but not the new moon. We're going to start off with the third day of the moon, when the moon starts to get bigger. So it's then dark, we're starting to get some more light in the moon. You can imagine a sliver of light in the sky. So that's a time when we're starting to have some more moonlight. So it's a little bit more yang, but it's still yin because it's very small. But it's growing, it's getting bigger, which is a yang activity. So you can see how it can be hard to say even just the moon is just yin all by itself. It's doing something yang right now, it's growing. And I took this picture in China because this is kind of like the beginning of a moon growing. It's, of course China is growing a ton right now, but this is a sidewalk in China, and it shows how they're constructing everything. They're reconstructing the road, they're reconstructing the sidewalk. They're growing by building tons of buildings, and so there's this enthusiasm. And in practical life for people anywhere, thinking about when you might want to get surgery. The third day after a new moon is a good day to get surgery because your body is in a recuperating stage. It's able to grow itself. It's not too excited. You will be able to recover and stop bleeding as opposed to keep on bleeding. I'll talk more about that later. Another thing about this picture that I like is that there's hopefulness. There's like so much hope when a lot of construction is happening. It's exciting. But it's only part of the whole thing. It's only part of the moon cycle. It's only part of the cycle. And the next part is 8 days after the moon started to be new moon. If you exaggerate the hope in a building, what might you get to? You might get a little bit of excitement, even more excitement. Maybe some tempers will flare. People might be a little bit on edge. Things might come out a little bit quicker. So I'm showing a picture of the child yelling and the mother yelling back, maybe, or trying to quiet him. You know, what do you do when those energies come up? When you're bursting, or you might want to get mad. But this time also passes. Things get even more quick. Things get even more bright. And before they do that, they're coming out in a way that also we want that energy of things getting more exciting, like the spring. So I have a picture of the spring. So it doesn't have to be just like somebody's just ready to burst out and be angry. Another part of the cycle is that it could just be that we're seeing something beautiful, like daffodils. And they even start off pointing down and then come up. What we're going to see next is something coming up even more. The full moon. It's called in Chinese medicine the 15th day, or the Chinese in China. It's the 15th day of the moon cycle. So this is when things are maximal. This is the most young time of the whole entire moon cycle, and the moon is more related to yin. But this is kind of equated to when there's a big celebration, something that you've been building up to for a while, whether it's only 15 days or whether it's months and months and months playing away. I like this picture because this is my sister, and she always is so good at looking excited for when she gets presents or when something exciting is happening to her. So I have another picture of her wedding. She looks so excited to just be eating cake. And so you can notice in the picture, she's in a white tent, so it's very bright. There's lights all around her. Above her is something you can't see, but it's a red globe lantern. So it's another round symbol. The cake is round, just like a full moon. People typically eat round wedding cakes. And so it's all very symbolic of this fullness and brightness that we see as bright time. Brides put on makeup to make their eyes bigger, to look bigger. They can let more light in. It appears like they're letting more light into their eyes at that time. They wear a white dress. What better to reflect the light and look like they're shining even more like the moon or even more like the sun. Because we know the full moon is what's really glowing. And also, this is not a good time to get surgery because everything is so exciting in your body, moving around a lot. This could be a time when things burst out even more than the earlier slide where there's some anger, some flowers coming out. This is said to be a time when more women go into labor, when more women get their period. Things might happen more in the body. You can imagine what more is bursting out than the baby being born. It's not a good time to eat red meat because red meat has this strong energy already. So you don't want to augment that. You just want to maybe even eat less. And if you notice, you'll probably notice that your body is naturally going to feel more excited at that time. You may notice that you feel like you have insomnia, but it might just be that it says it's hibernating. Can you help?
I'm not very savvy.
Is it plugged in?
I'm so sorry.
So if you find yourself having insomnia, at the time of the full moon, you might just stay awake. It might be a chance for you to experience what it really feels like to just have some more energy at that time. And it's a time when you also might notice that if you drink a lot of coffee, it might not make a difference for how you feel. You might not feel more awake, but if you drink less of it, you'll feel naturally more awake. A lot of coffee or tea, anything with caffeine. So you're able to reduce the amount of stimulants that you need at that time, but feel the natural stimulation of the full moon. And I'm going to introduce this idea of also considering that having that extra time being awake is a time when you can use your extra time for some kind of spiritual pursuits. And thank you. And you'll probably want some spiritual pursuits or something to make you feel helped out in this next phase of the moon cycle. The 16th day of the new moon can be a time of beginning to worry. Think of how you feel after a big event, you know, where your life has been focused on that event, or you've been very busy, you've seen a lot of friends, and then what do you do the next day? There's a sense of almost a loss happening. There's another side of it though. It can be also just a time to recognize what's happening next. So if you can recognize that instead of a time of worry, it's actually just a time when there happens to be no one there, or you just have more time put to yourself or quiet, then you're moving just from the beginning phase of the youth or the bursting out energy into the ripeness, and you move past that into a time of the moon waning and maturity. Or there could be one part of it, maturing or noticing, or if you had some sort of spiritual practices or qigong, you could do them you could start doing them more at this time, or use them to help you wonder why you're worrying and what's happening. The 23rd day after the moon started can be even more intense. This is a time of worry getting even bigger, a time of loss and depression. So here's a picture of a woman looking sort of at the shadow. What's there? Where has the moonlight gone? She could be asking, but also asking where are the people that I celebrated with? Where is my youth? Where is myself? I'm not sure where any of this is. So again, I invite you to consider another face of this whole picture, which can be just that it can be just a time of acknowledging the loss instead of thinking that it needs to be depression. Really true sadness could be depression, or it could just be I'm sad, and that's what's happening right now. And this is a picture of a fall, so that's when the leaves look beautiful. It can be a glorious time, and it's also a time when the leaves are turning color and leaving. So it's that sense of loss, getting a little bit darker, getting toward the winter time. And getting toward the new moon. And I don't know if maybe by now anyone notices, but I'm talking about not just the moon cycle, but the season cycle, or the cycle of any event happening, the life cycle of a person. And that's because it's all the cycles that we experience, and the moon is one of them. And it's a nice metaphor for other ones. And then we get to the new moon. And like I said, at the full moon, the person has makeup on to let in more light, look even bigger. The emotion fear is associated with the new moon. And in fear, eyebrows are raised. They can even go so far as to have their lips stacked. Imagine it's so dark, you need to let in as much light as you can. And you could go a long time being afraid, or you can allow the moon cycle to move, or any cycle to move into another emotion. Or you can also recognize, I invite you to recognize that the fear can also just be another face of being alone, and being in a very yin time, being in the dark side of a hill, being in the dark side of a lifetime, but that can be quiet, peaceful, restful, renewing. For every time that we spend celebrating, like in the wedding picture, it's healthy to have some time when we're not celebrating, or we're celebrating how quiet it is somewhere else, and being in retreat and alone. And this picture also has all this water surrounding the person standing out on some stone. And so the water is also a symbol of yin. It always goes to the lowest place. And so in Chinese medicine, we also have Taoist medicine, which is all about following the flow of water to get to a lower place and just going where things will go. And so you can allow a spiritual practice or just reflection to show you where things will go naturally, then you're allowing a really yin activity to happen. And it can be hopefully even as beautiful or more beautiful. And finally, I guess this picture also helps you, like, it can also look like maybe the person's so alone and they're so desolate, they might be in a place, like, be so depressed they want to die. So if we can recognize that maybe that urge is just a real urge for getting to another part of the cycle, then it doesn't have to be that we actually want to die. It can be depressing and sad, but that can be quickly followed by the next part, which is the moon going back up to the first day, the second day, the third day. So there's hopefulness that comes right after the new moon. And this person could jump off, or she could turn around and walk right back to the photographer. So here's a nice picture of all the moon phases together. If we can recognize that the moon is always changing and that our emotions can change, then that's good. In Chinese medicine, it's not going to have an emotion that lasts too long. We call that stagnation. So something is stuck and staying in place, and that's not healthy. We want things to always be moving. Not too much, because that would be like constantly our bodies are in full moon. So we want to be in a nice place of moving, and we can have a full moon time of anything that we do, and a new moon time of anything that we do, and building, and a waning time of everything that we do. But if we let an emotion last for too long, it can be really unhealthy. Or anything else left, a celebration maybe. So we really want to be acknowledging of the cycle and the ability to change. And also, if we're able to connect with the most yin part, because this is a talk on more yin, if we're able to connect with the more yin part, we can see there's really something rich and wealthy in there, and we can find things that really help us a lot. And you can help us go to a more yang time. And I want to emphasize that because I think in our culture we value so much being young, being active, and if you find yourself focused so much on that, you might want to ask, why do I not value becoming older? Or what is so difficult about just taking some time to rest? And why don't I want to do that? And even starting to ask that question can be helpful, find out why. Because we need all the parts, and we need the yin time of our lives too. And I just wanted to, this is Autumn Moon Festival, to say something brief about what's happening this month, which is there's a full moon in the 8th lunar month. And so that is in September, usually. You might already know a little bit about the Chinese New Year and how that's different times every year. So it's always sometime in January or February, and when the Chinese New Year begins, that is the first lunar month starting. So the full moon is the 15th day of the 8th lunar month. They count from that Chinese New Year, and then come out sometime in September, and you'll find a full moon. And that is a time of celebrating, kind of like Thanksgiving or a harvest. And in China, weird, everything turned black. So there's text in there, but you just can't see it. In China, it's a pretty big celebration to have the Autumn Moon Festival. And it's actually, the characters are cut off, but this is center fall. So it's just really the center of the fall rather than a moon festival, but they use the lunar calendar, so you end up finding out that it's the center of the fall. And that is because it's really kind of crazy to learn in Chinese medicine that the fall, or did you know the fall actually started a couple months ago when we thought it was summer. So now this is the middle of the fall coming up. And so people will celebrate at night under the full moon. And they go outside and have a picnic. And they'll have moon cakes. Has anyone had moon cake in here? A couple of you have. They're pretty different, right? They're like a thin pastry around a thick bean paste. And they take some getting used to. But they're round in shape, like a moon. And they have usually some writing on the top of them. And then another thing that people eat are also other round things, like pomelos, round cups of tea. So things that symbolize the moon and brightness, like pomelo. Do you guys know pomelos? Even bigger than a grapefruit, and they're yellow. And they probably look even more like the yellowish autumn moon than other ones, and grapefruits or oranges. And people will also have lanterns outside with them too, so lighting up the sky, their surroundings even more. And I want to end with a quote from one of the texts that we use all the time in Chinese medicine that says, "Those wise and good human beings of the past who were able to preserve their health had mastered the ways of nourishing life in balance with heaven and earth, with the position of the sun, with the waxing and waning of the moon, with mutual contradictions of yin and yang, and the alternation of the 4 seasons." So I invite you to consider the moon and the yin of the moon in relation to also the sky and the earth and the seasons, and in relation to the sun, and in the seasons of the year, and any other cycle that you can think of. What's it like when you do something mundane, like take a shower? What's the yang part of it and what's the yin part of it? And how is it a cycle? Or when next time that you're eating dinner. Does anybody have any questions?
What's the exact date of
The Autumn Moon Festival? It's the 29th or 30th.
30.
The 30th?
We're having a lot of program activities on that date here. We're only open from 10 a.m. to 6, but we will have programs all day long.
Oh,
Okram is a part of it.
Great.
But we'll have kids' activities and music, Chinese music, and Qigong, and lots of stuff. At September 30th, and all of the programming will be listed on our website.
Oh, good. There's no festival on the street this year,
No, there's not. Oftentimes the neighborhood has, the neighborhood association has put on a festival called Autumn Moon Festival, and they're not doing it this year.
That's something to look for, and maybe next year to see if there's an autumn moon festival. But the one here sounds good,
Yeah, it'll be a fun day in the garden.
and it's a Saturday.
It's a Sunday,
It's a Sunday. Great,
September 30th.
great.
If you could comment about, I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this as a question, but I know recently I have a young friend who's diagnosed bipolar, which happens a lot with young women around age 30,
Mm-hmm.
usually from some sort of trauma that has triggered it earlier in life. But one of the things, because I was noticing what you were saying, is she goes through these very, I guess what you would call yang, and then a yin,
Yeah.
up, down,
Yeah,
and how that might relate to what you're talking about,
yeah,
and what Chinese traditional medicine do for people like that.
yeah. Well, in Chinese traditional medicine, our aim is to balance yin and yang, so balance the active times and the more quiet times within us. Every internal organ has more active and more passive or quiet parts of itself, and more those functions of active and quiet also. And so our emotions also, as I was saying about the moon cycle. And so for somebody who has bipolar, we would try to help them even out the extremes so that they can be more balanced themselves. And I think also with bipolar, people have a tendency to, and with any like emotional, where they're really, really strong in one emotion, they have a tendency to feel like that's the one emotion they're having right now, and they want to keep having it, and that's where the person will crash after. So with bipolar, someone's very, very active for way longer than they need to be, and then they get very exhausted. And so that's something that Chinese medicine can help them, regain afterward too. Not be quite so low, not be quite so high. And really have
So what's the treatment, like acupuncture, or what do you do?
yeah, acupuncture and herbal medicine both. And I think we cannot, well, I know that we cannot, make recommendations about the drugs that they take. And so sometimes, depending on what drug somebody's taking, they may or may not want to take Chinese herbs. But Chinese herbs can help a lot also because they're a substance. Like with acupuncture, we can help somebody, notice their inside, notice their yin nature, and become very quiet and almost take a nap. And then with Chinese herbs, we can help them get some more quiet substance into their bodies. And so if somebody can get restful with acupuncture, but maybe they're very, very exhausted because of getting so high for so long, that it can really help them to have the right foods that nourish them, and maybe even some herbs to nourish them and help them regain more quiet themselves, and more of their own good nature.
Are there any thoughts about why, are we just becoming as a society more aware of this, or are there any real statistics that this is on the increase for a particular reason?
Like bipolar?
Bipolar.
Well, I think that overall, in our world, there's not as much acknowledgement of the yin, and people don't have the same lives of staying in the same city their whole lives, or staying near their families. Maybe even their rituals change throughout their lives. And a yin activity is also to go through the cycle. And so, how many of us, do the same exact celebrations year after year for our entire lives, in the same exact way? And so, what is tethering us to our roots? And there's so much of an emphasis on, you can even see the picture in China that I took of more building, more learning, more growth. You have to get new TV shows. You have to get new appliances. Like, what in our houses was even around, 50 years ago? And so that's all kind of a strong force toward having more yang in our lives. And so how do we also go back to having some more yin in our lives to balance that out? And I think some people are more susceptible, maybe more sensitive to feeling the culture around them, the rest of what's happening in our world. We think it's so acceptable to explore outer space with rockets, even, but then how do we think it's also acceptable to explore what's inside ourselves? And so some people who are so sensitive to what's happening, I think that they're more likely to think they are what's happening. So something like bipolar or even depression is kind of a sign of the times of people not knowing how to find their own yin nature, their own inside nature, their own reflection time. And so they feel lost, they feel depressed, or they feel like they have to follow what's happening outside, all the yang activities so strong that they crash. That's one way you can look at bipolar.
What's the story with the show and tell?
The show, I think, these are some of the things that we use in Chinese medicine. And I was mentioning some herbs and acupuncture. So there's some samples of different herbs here. And you're welcome to look at them, touch them. Here's a whole formula together, how we mix the herbs. Several herbs go together into one formula. Something that's really helpful for people who have emotional problems, they really feel like so strongly, they want to maybe let them go home with some way they can even do treatment on themselves. So, or for some other treatments too. So we put these stickers on their ears with little seeds in them. And so the seeds will stimulate ear acupuncture points. And so they can be, a certain combination is really good for the emotions, if you're helping to balance the emotions, or balance addiction, or strong depression. But other combinations can be really good for body pain or various other things. The ear is a little picture of the entire body. You can treat so much through the ear. And we have some other herbal medicines here. A lot of herbs are taken as pills that are prepared in China. These ones with the blue and white are some really good ones for trauma. You can use it as a powder to put on a cut, or you can put a whole sticker on an area that you hurt yourself. I think this is a spray on. And we also have another way of treating with Chinese medicine herbs, which is to burn the herb. It can be a little incense stick or a big incense stick. And it's an herb called mugwort, so it's a very, very actually yang thing. This is said to carry in the true yang nature of the sun into your body. So for an area that needs to be warmed or moved more, this would be really helpful for somebody to have burnt on or near their body without burning the body. Also, I invite you to come take some Hims or get some other tea. Does anyone have any other questions? Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed